Hey everyone. Now I'm going to do a server upgrade on my server here in the house. And as I was doing the planning for it, I thought before I do a video on the actual upgrade, I'll go through what you should do when doing any sort of upgrade or outage, because this applies to anywhere in enterprise in this whole industry. So I've made a bit of a list. These are just some of the things that I recommend when doing an upgrade or performing some sort of outage. So I'll go through with my thoughts. Okay, so the first thing is why we're doing a change. Okay, what's it for? What's it all about? Now that can be for something as simple as keeping your firmware up to date. You're just setting a time aside to upgrade all your systems. But it could be for other things too if you're doing a fundamental change that's a bit bigger than that. In my instance, I've got some broken installs, in particular VLC. So when I installed it and put VLC on there in the usual method with apt-get, it didn't include support for RTSP, so I couldn't run my cameras from that. So I've been using a Raspberry Pi to stream the video ever since, and I don't like that situation, so I'm going to bring it all back to the server in the proper method. Another reason, it's just time for an update. It's been a while, and as I said, keeping things up to date is generally pretty good. Plus just to clean up the mess that it's evolved over time with all the random crap that I don't need on there. As I said, security camera system is the main reason of this with VLC, and of course to make a video for you lot, because you might be interested, you might not. Okay, so there's some of the reasons you might be doing some sort of upgrade or outage. Now the next question to ask is when you're going to do it and how long is it going to go for? Because if systems are down, you can't have people wondering what's going on when you've got a broken network, broken computer systems. So for me here, for most people, it's not going to be during a weekday because obviously that's the busiest time. And also, me in particular, I'll do it on the weekend, but I like to do it early morning. Firstly, because I like doing things early in the morning when I'm sort of more into it first thing of the day. But also, if something does go wrong, I've then got the day to try and fix it rather than starting it at 8 o'clock at night and then you run into problems and you're up all night. So early on a weekend morning is generally when I'd say to do upgrades. Okay, next to the stakeholders. Now, they're people who are going to be affected by this, basically. The people who use the systems, they're the stakeholders. For me, obviously, at home, I'm the only stakeholder, so I'm the maintenance and the user. So I only have myself to please. But of course, in a workplace, enterprise situation, there could be thousands of stakeholders who would be affected by this outage. So got to let them know and give them plenty of notice too, so they don't get a surprise. Now, you'd also have to let them know if anything's going to change. So if it's just a firmware upgrade for a switch or something, the user won't see any difference. I mean, they would have had an outage to deal with, but they won't know any difference afterwards. But if you're changing functionality of some sort of program or a system, obviously you'd have to let them know that. Obviously this will have to be agreed upon before you even do this thing. So they're the stakeholders. So then you've got to come up with the actual plan, which will include exactly what you're going to do. Now this is for the technical person. So obviously I've made my list of things to do, which is going to start with the install, setting up the network interfaces, mounting the hard drives, doing network shares and all that sort of thing. I've got a list of that, which I'll go through in upcoming videos. But whatever the upgrade or outage is that you're doing, make a list of things you've got to do. So don't forget all the settings, whatever program installs, configs, scripts, etc. You get the idea. Now the next one is staging. And this is probably the thing that made me make this video in the first place, because I deal with a lot of enterprises, bigger ones. I mean, I might be a clown on YouTube, but I actually deal with some heavy networks out there. And a big problem that comes up is for some reason people do a deployment of some setup, usually a network, because that's what I deal with, and they don't test it properly first. They just deploy it how it's going to be deployed and try and do fault finding live on the go. Now, that's just bad. You should set it up in a lab in your own, controlled environment before putting it on people. You should be absolutely sure it's going to work before you roll it out. The worst case I've seen is someone who set up a wireless network in a hospital and thought, yeah, it'll be right. And they didn't test it properly. And then nurses couldn't do this, that, the other. They were up in arms. They were furious. Now, it's bad enough on any situation, but for a hospital, that was excessively bad. And I found that people who do that often have senior something in their email signature. And I just think, fuck, where are we? Anyway, so making sure it works as a proof of concept before putting it in a live environment, even if you've done it before. New programs might behave differently, for instance, VLC. So what I've done is I set up a VM and put the software I wanted on it to make sure everything worked how I wanted to do. So I've got it working as a virtual machine in preparation for installing it live on the hardware. Now the next one's the back out plan, or your rollback plan, whatever you want to call it. That's when you're trying to do it and it goes tits up and it doesn't go the way you want it to, and you've got to go back to a known state, and abort the procedure and just get it back to a known working state so people can carry on. So in my example of the server upgrade, my rollback procedure is to put the old hard drive in, because I'm going to do it all on a new one, solid state drive here. This is what's going on. And if I mess the whole thing up, I can still put the old one back in. So there's my rollback plan. Okay, so next is actually doing the job. Get stuck into it. Don't muck around. You've got your plan, work to it. Stick to your plan. Don't try and sort of make things up as you go along. You should know what you set out to do and just get that job done. When I say keep any non-technical staff away, I mean it, because they're useless. All they'll do is interrupt you, take up your time, distract you from what you're doing, and it won't make it go any faster. Good non-technical people, the few that are out there, they will leave you alone, but a lot won't, and they'll just be pushing for updates, and they'll be trying to tell you how critical their thing is because they're special, right? If you can't get rid of them, just do your best to ignore them or make it known that they're not welcome. Now, if it's a long task, like let's say it's a whole physical thing and you're moving stuff and it's going to take a long time, they could want updates on your progress. Now, ideally, I think that was my next point, ideally you'd have someone else on your side who doesn't necessarily have to be too technical, but enough to be like your PR person. So rather than all these managers coming at you saying, is it done yet? What's the fucking thing? Just have someone to update them, which keeps them out of your hair. Okay, and also what they should do is when they get asked those things, don't just be a middleman and ask you the same question, because that defeats the point of you being there in the first place. If you're that middleman, you handle them to keep them out of the technician's face. And if something's really bad, then they can pass it through. It's a bit excessive, but unfortunately we have to have that because project managers and non-technical people tend to stick their nose in, and the higher up they are, they think they're important, so their little thing is more important than this big thing that you've got to deal with over here. So if you've got someone to handle them, that's always handy, if they know how to do it right, not just fluffers. And lastly, test the thing. So once it's all done, you think it's working. Is it really working? Run through some proper tests, make sure it works. And if it's something new, make sure that works as you expected. And the last one here, when I say does it work from startup without any intervention, in my case for the server, I want to be able to just turn it on and not have to do anything. I shouldn't have to run any startup scripts. I shouldn't have to do something manually. It should all work. And one of the things I've got there is in the settings for the hardware, if power's lost and comes back, I make it so it turns on. So if something does go wrong, when power comes back, it automatically boots up. So you've got to test all that. And if you do all that, you've got a solid plan and you've got a rollback plan in case it goes wrong, you should be right. So that's what I'm going to do. So tomorrow I'll start my upgrade of my server and I'll record that as well. But I just wanted to make this video, hopefully quickly, if it wasn't too long, just to let you know that this not only applies to doing this at home, but also in the enterprise. I mean, I wouldn't do this at home without doing my plan. So you definitely wouldn't do it on an enterprise where there's real stakeholders and proper equipment and money and all that at stake without a plan. So, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail, as they say. So that'll do, and until next time, take it easy.